Welcome back, everyone, to Healthy Living, Happy Life podcast. I'm excited. I am here again with my friend Amalia Natalio, who is a relationship guide, spiritual teacher, and author. She is the founder of KarmicKindness, and she is a spiritual advisor and intuitive coach who supports her clients in pinpointing and shifting undesirable life patterns, utilizing, easy for me to say, her divine channel, the wisdom of astrology, human design, soul contract, gene keys, hypnotherapy, and more in her bespoke Soulful Life program. Amalia, thank you for being back. I'm so excited to have you here with us. And welcome.
Thank you for having me back, Denise. I'm really excited for our continued conversation about the soul, about spirituality, about our bodies, about health and happiness. I mean, this is pretty much what your jam is.
Absolutely. And, the health and the happiness piece goes together. People always ask me, why, is it healthy living, happy life? Why not happy life, healthy living? And my thought from day one is if we don't have our health, mind, body, spirit, we don't have the happiness, or the happiness that we are searching for eludes us. And I think you can definitely explain that a little bit more in our conversation. So I would like to start today talking about the surgery that you had, your jaw surgery, and you were telling us about that in our first session. But I think this is a good place to start today, because this is it's a very physical piece of your journey and how that connects to the spiritual experience that you have had and have been on. So I open the floor and the mic to you, my friend.
Well, thank you for the floor and the mic. Great question. It was a huge catalyst for me. And I actually wrote about this in my upcoming book, We to Me, A Story of Love, Loss, and Liberation, which I'll make sure I give you the info on that so folks can check that out if they're interested. The jaw surgery that I had, just to remind folks who didn't hear the first episode, or maybe it's been a little while and they happened upon this one. I had a 9-hour jaw surgery. I was in the hospital for 4 days. I was unable to eat anything other than pureed food through a syringe that I would put in the back of my mouth. My jaw was wired shut, and I was not really able to get back to life as normal for about a year. And even then I had limited use of my jaw. It was a traumatic time, but also a catalyzing time, because it pushed me outside of my comfort zone. It forced me to be still and be with myself, which to me is a spiritual moment, a spiritual experience in general. How often do we actually sit in the stillness of ourselves when we're not forced, like I was? I was forced. And that really allowed me to get to a place of understanding around that little voice that was inside of me, prompting me and urging me ever so gently towards the path of starting KarmicKindness, my business, which at the time was a jewelry business. And I feel like that's part of that spiritual experience, is the issues you have in your life that connect directly to your soul, nudging you or guiding you to a different path, to another way of being, another way of experiencing life. And had that not happened, I'm not sure that I would be sitting in this chair talking to you today, because I was living a generally good life. It felt like something was missing. And that led to subsequent other health issues that also led to infidelity in my marriage, and subsequent what I call disentanglement, which is what most people know as divorce. And then it also led me to a path of finding another love and moving to another state. And so those are all parts of my experience that tie in the physical experience of the surgery and the body and your physical experience here on earth, with the spiritual of that little whisper and nudge that there's something else. And then following my own intuitive knowing to spiritual breadcrumbs that were left for me, and opening myself up to see the signs, to follow the the little signpost that would light up in front of me that I feel like a lot of people see but ignore for all the reasons. Not enough money, what would people think? I can't, I'm too old, I'm too young, I'm not smart enough, like all the things that
Right.
really are excuses for you not stepping into what your soul wished to experience here. And that's not, I don't want to come off as making that sound judgy, because there is no time frame. It can happen anytime. If you don't finish it now, you can finish it in another lifetime. Again, from that's my belief system. And I have the gift of being able to see other lifetimes of mine and be able to put the pieces together. So that's why I can say, I know this to be true. And I feel like there's so many stories I could share on that, but I'll just leave it there.
We may come back to one of those stories. If not today, another time. Because that to me is mind-blowing. It really is. And I know there are many people like you that are intuitive in these ways. And I wish I was more that way. And maybe that's something that I can learn. And maybe that's part of why we're having these conversations, is this is something that we can learn. And like you said, maybe it's not it's not completed in this lifetime, but I think if we're always open to learning, we're always opening to growing.
Oh yeah, I love that.
I like
Very
growing.
nice.
Growth is good.
Yes. It can be
But
uncomfortable, but it's good.
yes. On a side note, and I'm just curious, when you had your surgery, how old were your kids? Because you have 4 kids.
So how old were they? I had one in college, one soon going to college, one in elementary, and one in middle school.
So you had a lot of other things going on in your
Oh yeah.
world.
Oh yeah.
with
It wasn't
4 kids.
just, yeah, it was not just like, oh, this is not a big thing, the kids are grown. It was a lot of
Right.
juggling. My husband at the time did the best that he could to help out, but he was also running his business. One of my oldest friends, she came up and stayed for about a week, which was such a blessing. Thank you to her, to help out, because there was no way that I could have managed and functioned. And I had a small posse of girlfriends who came and helped out, and grateful for them, and neighbors that brought meals for the family, and I couldn't eat them, but the family could. So it was really, really, it's one of those situations. I feel like when you're in a crisis, someone gets married, babies, someone dies, who shows up, who's there and who's not. So it was, to me, another one of those times in my life where it was a clearing out of some people and a welcoming in of others. So there were some where I was so shocked that they came to my rescue and checked in with me and really cared, and other people that I thought for sure would be there, and they were completely missing in action. So, I feel like there's big moments in our life, they're catalysts, whether it's a jaw surgery or anything else, to make a change. Something has been changed in your world, and then you can adjust and adapt, or you can be swept under by it. And I think we always have a choice.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it was important for us to hear about, the kids, because if this was something, the kids were grown, they're out of the house, that would have been a very different situation. So, when I talk about the growth, wow, I mean, talk about how much you grew and had to be a very, a much stronger person, a bigger person, even without being able to eat or talk very much. I can't imagine that. I'm sure there are days that my husband would love the fact that I couldn't talk just for an hour. I'm a communicator. I love to talk.
Same.
So it's just, I guess I'm still so intrigued by like how all of these pieces and how beautiful it is. Like you just said, people came who you may not have expected, and other people. And it's so true in life. And that's really where I see, that people come, the reason, season, lifetime type of friends. And sometimes that, a lifetime friend, isn't necessarily your entire life. It could be like a big chunk of life, but then, life changes, things are not the same. You go in different directions. And I think it's important for people to understand that that's okay.
It is okay. I feel like there's
Mhm.
a lot of pressure put on us as a society and a culture, at least in the US, that we have to have friends forever and we have to stay married forever. And it's this lifelong commitment, even though divorce rates are pretty high. About 50% of people who get married get divorced. And of those, there's a pretty large percentage of couples that divorce because of infidelity in the marriage. So there's a breakdown somewhere along the way. And listen, I'm a huge advocate of people, souls that find each other again and they stay together for a lifetime, and they have challenge, they have struggle, they work through it, and they find a way to happiness with one another.
Mhm.
All for that. I'm not anti-marriage. I am married.
Obviously, you're married.
I am married. However, I also don't necessarily believe in the fact that everyone is destined to be married for the duration of their life.
Mhm.
And I feel like that people similar to friends in marriages, they come in for a season, and that's perfect. The one thing that really breaks my heart and was so important in my disentanglement story from my first husband was to make it as amicable and as easeful as possible for our kids. One of my biggest goals was that I never wanted our children to feel like they could not invite their father and me to an event, to a
Mhm.
graduation, a birthday party, a baby being born, anything, a marriage. It's like that. I just that to me would be that was just not acceptable. So I was going to do everything I could to make sure that
Mhm.
that was not the scenario. I feel like when you get into the finger pointing and the blame game, and listen, with my marriage, there was to my first husband, there was infidelity, and so that's an easy finger towards him.
Absolutely.
He's
Mhm.
a jerk. And there's so many things, so many factors at play that led to that.
Mhm.
And I would say the majority of situations where there is infidelity, there's some breakdown in the relationship somewhere for somebody else to find a way to enter. And so I had to really take responsibility for my part in the relationship, in our marriage. And that doesn't
Mhm.
excuse what happened by any stretch, but it also made me responsible 100% for me, and that
Mhm.
meant that he was 100% responsible for him. And I think for me, being able to take the pressure off and be like, I want it equal, that made it equal. I was able to go, okay, you're responsible for you. I'm responsible for me. This is how I'm approaching things going forward. And it wasn't easy. It was, even now,
Can't imagine.
a few
Mhm.
years later, still have to check in with myself and make sure I'm not defaulting to old beliefs and
Mhm.
feelings, to be really present with myself and with him, because I really truly love him for being the father of my children and for the 25 years that we had together. However, that part of our agreement, if you will, is complete. I mean, pretty much the way I shared with him when, I was like, I reached my threshold, and I said, I believe our karmic expiry date has come. It was like we had finished what we came to do. We had karmically balanced. And granted, it's not perfect. There's always some nuance to it. And we have these 4 kids. So there's always a connection with us. But it definitely felt like we have an opportunity here to do this differently and to not be in a
Mm.
place where
Yeah.
there is contention and
Right.
and negativity and just that
Mhm.
toxicity that often happens when there's divorce. Not always. I'm seeing more and
Right.
more people are coming through these disentanglement processes with a friendship intact, or at least being
Mhm.
able to be together in a social situation without wanting to rip each other's head off, which I say more power to you. That is fantastic.
I think it's really important because, you said, you guys have got 4 kids together. And so, married or not, you're still part of a family, the units changed, the dynamics have changed, but you're still family.
Yes.
And I think it's such honestly, it's a very mature way of looking at it. And I think most of the people that I know that have gone through disentanglement, there there was a level of immaturity that was so blatant. And I think that's a lot of the finger pointing and the blame game. Usually what I've seen, and I'm thinking of two different situations. One person kind of got to their, to their threshold and said, this is where we are. We've tried this, and we need to do something different.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one was more, I'm just not happy. And there wasn't the conversation. So, one was a more mature situation, conversation. And the other one just was, nope, I want to do something different. And that's fine. I mean, they made their choices. But I think especially when kids are involved, you have to think of them and be the, you have to say the bigger, better person, but be the best person you can be for everyone else. And you're included in that.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
that actually was such a big thing for you, but to be able to, stand in your ground and who you are and what you wanted.
Well, and that's where this work, the spiritual work, is a huge part of that journey, because I was so finger pointing and blaming for a while, for sure. I was really
Understandable.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm not sitting over here like, first of all, like an angel. I did nothing wrong. And I'm also not spiritually bypassing or just going, oh, everything is rainbows and unicorns and Shangri-La. No, there was anger, and there was pain, and there was hurt, and there was torment, and there were all the feelings that you would expect when infidelity is part of the story. For me personally, going into
Sure.
the self-worth and all of it. It sucked. Bottom line, it was not a good time. And from that, I liken it to, and I share this, often, is that it was a trifecta of my marriage falling apart. We were having issues with one of our kids, and my father was transitioning from the physical to the spiritual plane. And I was feeling like I was literally drowning, and I could barely come up for air. And I reached the bottom of the ocean. My toes were finally able to touch, and I was able to push up, get a breath of air. And that's when I realized I need to do something different. I need to approach this differently. I need to stop wallowing in all of these things that are going wrong. And you and I were talking about this earlier, the perspective of all these things in life are happening to me versus all of these things in life are happening for me to see what is available for me, which is beyond what I see right now. And that was a big piece of the opening for me, because I began to look around and search for solutions versus getting caught up in the story of all the woe is me. And when that happened, I started to find teachers and new people that would come into my life that showed me a lot of the work that I do now was inspired by my teacher, Joseph, which also was a surprise. I thought, a man, that's who's going to be my mentor and guide here. Like, he's not going to get this. He was amazing. And it was beautiful because he had his own, I had the male wounding, the masculine wounding, and he had female wounding. And we were literally healing each other in session and giving
almost yin and yang.
Yes. And I still work with him to this day. So even the mentor and guide needs a mentor and guide. And
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I always think of that as like, the ninja, not the ninja warrior, I love Star Wars. So, Luke Skywalker and the Jedis, they had, Obi-Wan and forget the guy before him. But the warrior needed to have that guide, and the guide had a guide before them. So it's not like one day somebody says, oh, I'm going to be a guide. No, they've gone through and experienced. And so, and that's the only way they can teach you and help you move forward. And now you're in that position where, you're the guide.
Yes.
And the people that are coming to you are spiritual Jedi warriors.
They are. They're ready. I see it with anyone that finds me or discovers my work. I know that there's some part of them that's ready to embark on the journey of their spiritual soul self. No question.
Mhm.
Now,
I think we just touched on something important.
yeah,
It's the being ready part.
yes.
Because somebody could find you. I mean, if I had found you 5 years ago, I would have been like, I have no idea what she does. What does this mean? I
Yeah.
wasn't ready. Now I read this and I'm like, wow, this is amazing. She does what? Wow, this is cool. I want to know more because I'm in a different place. And so I think that's important for listeners to know. You may not be completely in this place just yet, but by listening, you're here for a reason. You're listening to this podcast for a reason. So it may not be today, but I can pretty much assure that there will be a time, not in the not too distant future, that they're going to say, I listened to that podcast. I got to go find that lady Amalia.
And here's the thing. I so agree with you on being ready. And, oftentimes if people, they find me, they're interested in me, they feel this like spark of enthusiasm, they're ready. But like you were saying, some people may listen to this and this may be just a little opening to pique their curiosity, but then they discover somebody else that really they're ready for them at the right time. It's all divinely guided. So I guess my invitation to anyone that's listening is, if you feel even the slightest bit of curiosity about any of these modalities, do some research. And, on my website, I have a page that has some resources on there and a shop page with some books, and you can do some reading. And these are books. And I can't remember if we talked about this, Denise, before we were recording, or if it was I think it was before we were recording, about books and like not knowing which book to get for different things. And, I'll break it down for you and show you exactly what books that I would recommend if you're interested in checking out anything about these spiritual sciences, because it's a great launching off point. If you're not quite ready to go into a program, you at least have a place where you can read something that'll cost you maybe $12 versus whatever the program would be. So that's another place that people could start to.
I think that's important to have on your website for people to connect there, because you're right. Not everyone's not ready at the same time. And by connecting with you here, looking on your website and going through the resources, and there's some amazing resources here. There's your blog is here. You've got some meditations to download. You have your own podcast. Some of those episodes are on there. So I think it's really fantastic. What you do is amazing. And all of the steps to get people to you is so important, because the people listening obviously can find you, but people are going to find you in different ways. And if a book that you recommend after listening to this podcast, they go on your website and that's a book that you recommend, that's going to bring them one step closer, one, to who they're meant to be, who they want to be, and one step closer to, potentially, working with you to really help them grow. And there's my word, grow again. Yes, grow must be the word for October. And really become that person who they've always dreamed of being, and always felt that, they could be. But for whatever reason, the shame and the guilt, or the being scared, has held them back.
I'd like to just add one little nugget to that, and that is learning more about themselves is actually allowing them to express who they actually are. Like they already are that person that they would like to be. They're just having a little bit of a snafu in expressing that part of themselves. And, anyone can discover little bits and pieces of themselves on their own. They don't need me. My role, and people that do similar work to me, our role is to streamline the process, is to take these different pieces of who you are and share them with you in a way that you can embody and integrate, and then ultimately express. And that is, to me, one of the key elements of working with any sort of coach, you included, you're doing the same thing with people when it comes to their nutrition and their health and their happiness. Something else you mentioned earlier too about intuition and, you know, that kind of guidance that we get. Yes, I have the pretty easy ability of accessing intuitive knowledge and, you know, connecting into the dream world and other dimensions. However, anyone can. It's just a matter of practice, and it's also what you came here to experience. So I know, and this may be for another podcast, but I'll just give a little teaser. I know from my marriage that I needed to have information about our other lifetimes together, because of the fact that I tend to be someone who's like exit stage left if it gets too emotionally challenging. And he doesn't have all of the same memories because he doesn't need them. He knows innately, he knows from the center of his being, of his heart and his soul, who I am. But I needed more information. So I was given more information. So somebody else in a different situation in their life, whether it's love or work or whatever, they may have just enough of a dialogue or an informational flow to help get them over a hump or get them through something. And then they can expand it if they choose to. But I feel like we come in with kind of what we need in order to navigate, but then we can grow and expand more based on what's already there. But I do feel like some of us just come in with a little bit extra because they know what they're going to need later. I don't know if that's clear.
Yeah, like you come into this new life as a child, little baby, but you innately have that comes with you.
Yes.
Where, okay, that's interesting. I so wish my dad was here. He used to talk all the time about, now this is so funny because my dad was Catholic, but he believed in reincarnation and he never said past lives, but obviously he meant, you know, that, you know, obviously there were more and more. And he would be an interesting person to have this kind of conversation with, because I know what I know of my dad, he was on a journey. Like, I know that. Just who he was, what he did, what he was like, you know, what his family background was. Like, I'm like, he's on some kind of journey. I don't know what that is. And maybe he's in his new life. You know, he's in this next life, but he would have been someone who would have listened to this and gone at first, like I think on the surface, he'd have been like, all right, let me hear more. And I think there's a lot of people like that they're kind of like, all right, this is a little woo-woo for me, but it's kind of interesting. So tell me more.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and I can feel the energy of your dad here. And he's got kind of he reminds me a bit of your energy where like this part of your face, like he's got a really, his eyes are sweet. He's just got these very gentle, sweet eyes. And what I was being shown was this life for him was an experiential journey. He really came to try out a lot of different things, and some of them were a lot more challenging than he thought, with a greater reward, not necessarily in the form that he expected, but in one that was important for him as he has moved on. So, you know, that's the other piece of it too, is what we all come in to experience. It's like, you know, there's also free will. So, and there's no such thing as time. So it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of infinite life if you take, you know, 5 lifetimes to reach what you would consider in this human form success. It's just, it's the soul experience, and there's no good experience or bad experience from the soul perspective, but there is definitely a label from the human perspective.
That's very true. That's an interesting point, because in some of the positive intelligence stuff that we talk about, we actually talk about, is this good? Is this bad? A lot of it, when you're experiencing it, it's subjective. It's how you think about it. And we've talked about that. You know, two people can experience the same thing and see it very differently. You know, kind of like, you know, two kids growing up in the same household. And one says, well, mom was like this. And the other one's like, no, she was like this. And they're like, and, you know, mom's going, but I'm the same person. But
Yeah.
they just, you know, you just, it's that, is this good or is this bad? It's all up for interpretation, I guess.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I do my best in even the most challenging situations to ask myself a number of questions about what's happening, what lesson is in that in it for me, what can I glean from it, what can I do differently, is there something that needs to change, is there something that I need to speak to another person if somebody else is involved, and really do, and it's a deep dive that's only a short period of time. It's not like I'm spending hours in meditation over it. It's just reflection.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, from that place, even if it's very difficult in the time, I can't think of any situation that I've had in my life thus far where on the other side of it, I didn't see the beauty of the wisdom of the experience that I had. And, you know, bringing it back to the jaw surgery and my disentanglement. And, you know, a lot of what we've been talking about here today too, is when you're in those catalyzing, what I would call a dark night of the soul, that time when your soul feels like, oh, and
So heavy.
I just can't imagine another moment feeling the way you're feeling. That right there, to me, that's the gold. That's when you know you're the phoenix in the fire and you're getting ready to be reborn into this form that you cannot even imagine in the moment, but is so magical and so incredible and so who you actually are, that I see those challenging times as beautiful times.
I love it. I love it. And I think you make a very good point. It's about stepping back and reflecting. Um, we're all so busy.
Mm-hmm,
I
mm-hmm.
hate that word, but that's what we all say. Oh, I've been busy. Oh, I'm too busy. If we're too busy to think about who we are, who we want to be, what we want, we're never going to be able to become that person.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so, last thoughts before we close out. Any last thoughts you have for us?
I feel like when you're reflecting on your life, and let's just say you have no sense of yourself beyond what you've experienced so far. You don't know anything about these spiritual sciences I'm talking about, and you're not so sure about astrology and all of that. If you were to go to a place in your mind's eye that is a place that you feel like your best self, where you feel at peace and content and joyful in your body, wherever that place is, if you go there and you're sitting there, whether it's on the beach or a mountaintop in the middle of the woods or next to a pond, or maybe it's, you know, in your favorite cafe, wherever that is for you, imagine yourself there. And in that place, when you can feel it and you can embody it, reflect on, imagine and dream and visualize what would bring you joy in your life. What are you doing? Who are you with? What does your life look like? What does your life feel like? And after you do that, and you know, I actually have a meditation on this. It's on my website on resources that's free for people to access, with a little insight sheet bundle where they can jot down their notes. You can then take an action step towards that. And one small step towards that future that you now have articulated and crafted in your mind, which is now done, by the way. Once you imagine it, it's done.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the time between the imagining and the lining up with it. I think that's where people get tripped up. And I've fallen in that trap too, trust me, plenty of times. And I'm actually in one right now where I'm waiting for the gap to close.
The gap to close.
Yes. But it's just continuing to stay in that vibration of that vision for yourself. You know, people talk about this all the time. It's that feeling you have, you know, I mean, when I just described that place that you feel content and peaceful, I saw you, Denise, you went there and you were there. You had this, your face changed. Anyone watching the video can go back and see it. I mean, it was like, just like, oh, yeah. think about that for a second. If you can access it like that, and you're not the only one, anyone that's listening to this could, then just think about if you stay in that state of that feeling, you're going to attract more of that to you. And then that closes the gap a whole lot faster. When there's other people involved, I hear people say this all the time. Well, what about if there's other people involved? It's still the same thing. And they have their own free will choice. But if you're in a vibration that's ready for them and they're ready for you, you will automatically connect with each other. I mean, I was not looking for my current husband. I actually was like, oh my gosh, I'm not ready for this. But there was just no, once the train was on the tracks, it was on the tracks and gone. There was nothing I could do. But that's the thing. It's like when you're energetically ready, it happens. And so dream it. And I did dream it. And maybe in another podcast, I'll share a little bit more about how that happened. And it's just, we live in such a magical world that I would love for people to be able to play in a way that is truly aligned with who they are, understand who they are, understand their strengths, understand the karma they came in with, the things, their challenges in a different way, and then be able to live a life that truly is the magical, mystical being that they are.
I think that's the title of our next conversation, is the magical world that we live in.
Oh, I love it.
You said it. I wrote it down. I love it. Amalia, thank you. It is great talking with you. I love learning and feeling. What I love about this is I really do. I feel when I'm talking with you, and I hope that our listeners get that too. Like, I feel your energy, and I feel myself, wanting to learn more and get excited. And like you said, I knew my happy place, and I think these are the reasons we share these conversations. So thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Denise. It's been such a joy to be here with you.
Last thing before we go, I want you to tell everyone, how can they find your book?
Okay. So my book can be found at we to me, WETO me.love. And they could also go to KarmicKindness.com. And there's a tab that says We to Me on the homepage, or they could do Karmic Kindness /we-to-me. So lots of different ways to find the book.
Lots of different ways to find that book. Okay, so We to Me, everyone, that's the book that we are going to all go and search for, because it is just going to make life so much different and make changes in your lives that you cannot even imagine right now. So again, Amalia, thank you. Thank you to our listeners. We will be here again. So until next time, I leave you with this: healthy living, happy life. Have a great week, everyone.